just to get the ball rolling, we've made a couple of questions.
Yep.
And then after that, we'll just kind of have an open session so if people want to raise their hands and ask whatever. So, first question, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got involved with the Dolphin Project?
Yeah, so I'm Maria, I'm 27 and I'm from Dublin originally, but I live in Manchester. I'm a children's nurse and I just came across Dolphin Project's live stream from Taiji on Facebook when a friend of a friend had shared something. I'd never heard of Dolphin Project, I've never heard of Rick, I'd never heard of Taiji, I'd never even considered, well, I had no reason to think about dolphins being slaughtered, and I'd never particularly considered that dolphins were being taken out of the wild for captivity. So I just basically watched it this one night and was totally traumatised by the whole thing. Yeah. Rick did send us love. He loves the island. And I just kept watching it every night. I was just totally caught up with it. Every morning when my friend would be like, so did I get any dolphins? He could tell what sort of mood I was going to be in based on what had happened the night before in Taiji. And I just got totally caught up in it. I was reading into Dolphin Project, what else I did, into who Rick was. He's obviously quite famous in especially in America. But I'd never heard of him. I'd heard of Flipper, but I didn't know anything about Rick. And yeah, it just took off from there, and that's like not September just gone, the September before, and my life is completely different now.
Okay. So the next question is, can you describe to us your experiences working with Rick and the current situation regarding his recent arrest and deportation?
Yes. So how I got, that's how I found out about Dolphin Project. How I actually got involved is, that was the September. I'd arranged to go whale watching. I wanted to see orcas in the wild, and I'd arranged to go on a 5-day trip. I was supposed to go in the December, but it got cancelled and rearranged for the January. So really I was quite lucky because I was just in the right place at the right time. When I went in the January, I was out eating one night and overheard the two people at the table beside me talking about Taiji. So I was like earwigging, so I was like, that's that place I've just found out about on the internet. And it turned out they were journalists, one of whom you just seen, I don't know if you remember, but in the movie he gets like tackled to the ground by the dolphin hunters. His name's Hans Peter, and he's a journalist who works with Rick on a lot of things. So him and his friend were there writing a piece about the whale watching company that I was staying with. So we spent a lot of time together. I sort of had said that I'd just learned about all this, and when I got home I kept in touch with Hans Peter, and come the April I was just chatting to him just generally saying I wanted to be involved, I wanted to help more, what could I do, and he said that they were going to China. So that was in the March I was talking to him. He said they were going to China in April and I was welcome to come along if I wanted. I think he was probably joking, but I just wanted to fly to China. I only learned when I got there that he was actually probably joking. But I just really wanted to be involved, and I wanted to meet Rick, but me and the rest of the world wanted to meet Rick, so I had to sort of prove that I wanted to be involved. So off I went to China. I finished reading Rick's autobiography on the plane and then stepped off the plane and met him, so it was amazing. So that's how I sort of got in with the right people at the right time. I've since been to Taiji twice. I was there in September for the start of the season for a week, and that's when Rick was arrested. Obviously I was nervous going to Taiji, and I talked to Rick about it a lot. He stayed in touch with me after China, and he was like, no, it's fine, it's not like the Cove anymore, it's totally like chilled now, you just go, we're just taking pictures and videos and whatever, and we're all on our best behaviour, so it's fine. I arrived at 7:30 and Rick was arrested at 8:30. So I was like, Rick, you told me it was fine, and he was like, welcome to Taiji. I was like, oh my God. I was totally stressed out. We were just driving back from the restaurant and he got pulled over by the police, and what basically happened is it was a setup. So a journalist had come into the restaurant and reported to the police that he was driving. And I mean, they didn't really make it very subtle, because as we pulled around the corner they were almost pulling us over before we'd actually got to them. There were 2 police cars, and then as soon as we stepped out of the cars, these big floodlights came on and there were media everywhere. So I don't think they were just out for a stroll. They got him to do breath test, which he passed because he wasn't drink driving, and then they sort of panicked basically because they thought, okay, we wanted to arrest him for drink driving, and he obviously isn't. And really why they wanted to arrest him there is to be able to deport him, because from their point of view, if they get Rick out, they don't think anyone else is going to continue going to Taiji and trying to spread the word and stuff, which obviously isn't the case. So they sort of panicked and then came up with this passport thing. It is the law in Japan that you have to, foreigners have to carry their passport with them at all times. And when they asked Rick, he was sort of like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's in the car. So they were like, okay, you're arrested, you don't have your passport. And they refused to like look in the car or let him look in the car or, you know, really properly look for it, and they just took him off. 24 hours later, they found his passport in the car, so obviously they had to let him go because it turns out he did have it. So they shot themselves in the foot really, because how they've gone about things was actually illegal. So that was the arrest. It was very different being in Taiji with Rick than without Rick, because when you're with Rick, you just get mithered all the time. I don't know how he does it. I don't know why he bothers leaving the hotel room, because you just pulled over like every 5 minutes. And it's very polite mithering, but they just want to wind him up. They were constantly asking, you know, you've got to come back to the police station for more questioning, and he'd be like, well, is it mandatory? And they'd be like, oh, no, it's not mandatory. He'd be like, okay, I don't think I want to do it. And it's like, oh, maybe it is mandatory. It just like changes all the time. The rules just change like every 10 minutes when you're in Taiji. So that was that. He stayed there for however long, but obviously once he came away, he knew it was going to be more difficult for him to get back in, having been arrested. When you go, you don't need a visa. You can go for 90 days so long as you're not going to be making money. So you can go for commerce, you can go for conferences, things like that, but as long as you're not actually going to be making money, that's fine, you don't need a visa. But you do have to obviously fill in the entry card, and you have to take whether, you know, tourist or other or whatever you're there for. It's up to us whether we take tourist or whether we take other and say, you know, sightseeing or whatever. If you want to watch, you know, if you want to write that you're going to Taiji on it, you can, but I don't think anyone does. Because technically you are a tourist. We do other tourist stuff while we're there, and we're not making money. We're in a tourist spot. We're at a national park watching things, standing beside other tourists watching things. We're taking pictures, like Rick says, if people wanted to book into a hotel that was near a slaughterhouse in America, they could do that and they could go and take pictures, and you know, it's only the same thing, so it is sort of a loophole. So before coming back this time, he wanted to make sure he had legal representation, so they have one of the top 5 lawyers in Japan on the case at the minute, but unfortunately, obviously once he arrived, they tried to deport him anyway, and he refused to be deported. He then go into what's known as voluntary detention. So he wasn't arrested this time around, he was volunteering to stay. At any point he could say, okay, actually I want to go home, but that was him accepting the deportation order. And then that would be that he couldn't come back for a minimum of 5 years. I think chances with it being Rick is that minimum of 5 years is probably going to be extended for quite some time. So he spent 19 days in detention. While it went to court. It went to court on the Monday, and I can't remember what day it was, but it was quite a while afterwards that they actually came out with the decision. Legally they have to tell you within 24 hours of the hearing what the decision is, but it just went on and on and on. So the situation now is, because that took so long, actually how they dealt with that was illegal as well. So they're in a position now that they can file a lawsuit both for September and for his detention just now, which they've never been in that position before. So we'll see what happens there. So they still have the Japanese lawyer on the case, but I know while he was in detention, he was essentially treated the same as the actual criminals that were being held in the jail for crimes. So they're in isolation. They just have a mat and a blanket. So the mats they sleep on mats in Japan anyway. They're just like thin mats and a blanket, and I think he got like 2 slices of bread and some hot water in the morning or something. So he's looking a bit thin now, but he's in Miami, so he's
okay. So the last question there is, do you envision an end to dolphin hunting practices and the use of dolphins and other sea mammals in entertainment in the near future?
Wish I could just say yes. I think you have to narrow it down. In Europe, yes, I would like to say maybe the next 20 years, if that counts as like the near future. There's a lot of work being done in Europe. There's a lot of dolphin hunting practices that aren't to do. Well, actually, I was going to say with captivity, that's a lie. The Solomon Islands hunt dolphins as well. Dolphin Project have pretty much put a stop to that, like this close. They hunt dolphins for their teeth because they use them as a currency, but they've asked Dolphin Project's help to move it to pretty much come to an end. But again, Westerners saw a way of, exploiting the whole situation there, moved to the Solomon Islands, dolphin traffickers, and the same, got the locals to capture live dolphins to sell to them, for them to sell onwards. So it depends whether they might stop hunting them for their teeth, but whether they're going to stop catching them is another story. Obviously SeaWorld is seen as like the gold standard of captivity, and SeaWorld is a failing business model at the minute, so hopefully it'll keep failing. But the issue is we don't want them to go bankrupt or out of business, because then who's going to pay to look after their animals? Some of their orcas are quite young. If we put them in sea pens, in seawater, they're going to live obviously longer than we anticipate them living in tanks, which is the whole point. But that, could be like another 80 years for some of them. That's like beyond what our lives are going to be. Who's going to pay for that? So while people say, just want them to go bankrupt, or want them to go out of business, it's not as easy as that, because then what are you going to do with the animals? Some of them could be released, some of them couldn't. So it's pretty tricky, really. I think in some ways there's definitely going to be huge changes, but I mean, in like China, or all over Asia really, this is just starting. They've only just sort of got wind of aquariums, and they're popping open everywhere. China has a lot of dolphins like in shopping malls now, just in like random tanks in like shop, so this is they've just twigged on that this is like a money-making thing, and they're opening all over the place, so this is new. The same in Russia. I mean, Russia are like capturing dolphins left, right and centre, and orcas, so that's new to them. So I think to say that that's going to stop in the near future would be extremely optimistic. And then there's still countries that we can't even attempt to do anything in, like Bali, Indonesia at the minute. Most activists have had to pull out of there because they're so corrupt that you'd just be killed. So I think there's going to be huge changes, and I think it's going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I think Europe, yes, definitely. But the trouble is, even now we're seeing a lot of dolphinariums close in Europe, but there's nowhere for dolphins to go. It's not like tigers and elephants and things. There's sanctuaries everywhere, but there's no such thing as a dolphin sanctuary yet. We're working on it. But there's nowhere for them to go, so the dolphinarium closes, but the dolphins just go to a different aquarium. So yes, one closes, but it's not actually helping those particular dolphins. And a lot of them are captive bred now, so it makes it harder to rehab and release them.
God, you wouldn't think of all these things when you think free the dolphins, but actually there's so many layers to it.
Yeah, when you watch, when you go to Taiji, you soon realise that it's actually only about like 20%, maybe even less, about the dolphins. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of corruption, it's money, it's government politics, it's, there's other countries involved, there's so much. Yeah.
Okay.
Hope that answered those.
Oh, definitely. Does anyone have any questions?
What would they say, talking about Europe there, and what would the situation be, say, in the Nordic countries like Norway and their laws and stuff, because they still hunt whales and dolphins?
Yeah, so I don't know if they hunt dolphins. I'm not sure they do still hunt whales.
Oh, okay.
And where I was in Norway, that was a big whaling place. That was like right up the north, and I mean, a lot of whaling I think is political now. Even if there's not a demand for meat, because I know in Japan there's not a demand for dolphin meat. There's like a minimal demand for whale meat. It's all political. They're actually trying to like promote meat and things you can do with it to create a market, to say, this is why we're whaling, because there is a market. In situations like Norway, that's going to die out by itself. So activists are just leaving it alone, because the younger generations aren't interested in taking it on and becoming whalers or anything. So by the time that generation dies out, it's going to just come to an end itself. So there are some situations where you do have to just let that happen. The Faroe Islands is a good example of where activists have screwed up. Can I say that? that probably would have died out itself, maybe in a bit longer, but activists
It's nearly like a reactionary
have got
thing.
so aggressive that there are whalers, or rather dolphin hunters, that have been out of business for quite a long time, that have gone back into whaling, into dolphin hunting because of activist involvement, sort of, like you say, reaction of like, who do you think you are coming over here telling us we can't do this? So there are some situations where you have to just take a step back.
Would it be smart then in the Norway and countries like that where you say it's going to die out, and because they're like extremely like West and well known, to actually use that as a platform to consolidate why it's not accepted and why it's wrong, and actually shorten the period of time it would take for that to die out, and then use that as a reference then to create more impact in other areas?
So do you mean to get involved in Norway?
More so, and actually shorten the time period it takes to stop it, and then establish it there and consolidate it, and then use that then as a reference to other areas as like the catapult from. So it sounds like it'd be an easier project to do than areas that are.
Yeah, that's a good question. My personal opinion on that, because again, that's whaling, which I'm not an expert. I mean, I'm not an expert in dolphins either, but I think it will be a waste of resources, because I think it's probably going to die out quite soon.
Unless the potential of the marketing and awareness of that was worth the investment, because it would fast track it in other areas.
Yeah, you'd have to target that question at someone maybe in Sea Shepherd. Dolphin Project don't deal with whaling.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good question. But
although in the video as well, you did reference dolphins being whales.
Yeah. But whaling talks about traditional whaling, and we have to keep that so separate when we talk about Taiji. Because if you're in Taiji and they think you're there for anything to do with whaling, as in the large whales, that's a totally different scenario. So anti-whaling activists in Japan are terrorists. So you won't get in, you'll be arrested a lot easier.
Okay.
And there's a lot more ground, I suppose, for not having involvement, because it is used for meat. It is eaten, although now it's research, there's that whole side of it as well, and it is traditional, so it's harder to fight the battle until this isn't tradition. In Taiji, the dolphin hunting only started in 1969, the drive hunts, and it's written in Taiji Town's own history books that it was to find pilot whales to put on show. So they've actually documented it themselves that it started from more of the captivity side of things. And I think it became a bonus then that it was the whole pest control issue, but then actually as people weren't happy with it, they needed to find a reason to say they were doing it, and that's where the meat came into it. But yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I know Iceland buys Taiji dolphin meat, so maybe if people were involved in Iceland, that might
Yeah, set a precedent. Might set a precedent. Maybe you want to pass it back, see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's all right.
I haven't seen this movie before,
Mm-hmm.
so I can see that the technology has definitely changed since the movie was shot. You guys doing kind of more undercover camera work, drones, that kind of stuff. I mean, now that high definition cameras have become this small.
Nothing in Taiji is undercover, or can be undercover.
Fair enough.
Everything is absolutely out in the open. I just said to you before, or to someone before, you're never more than about this distance from the police when you're in Taiji, and that's not an exaggeration. As soon as you cross, you don't stay in Taiji, you stay in the next town. As soon as you drive literally over the line that says welcome to Taiji, there's a car waiting. We wait for them every morning. People allocated to you to follow you around, and nothing's undercover. And it's not that there wouldn't be maybe a point, but we have that footage, we know what's going on there. We don't need undercover footage. We need people to just pay attention and help. I mean, it's a really difficult one in Taiji. Sometimes it seems helpless, or hopeless rather, because they say in the cove, Rick says, that the fisherman said, if the world finds out about what we're doing here, it will be shut down. And well, the world knows. It's not shut down. So the question is it ever going to stop? We might be able to stop, convince them hunting dolphins isn't a good idea because of maybe the whole captivity thing, because there's no market for the meat. We're not going to convince them to stop hunting them so that they're killing them for the overfishing issue. That's not going to change. So it's a really tricky one. So sometimes you have to hope that it will change. But you also have to look at the long-term goal of the captivity side of things. If we can change sort of the world's, or however big you want the picture to be in view, on the captivity side of things, you can take the money out of the industry, and that's a very long-term goal. That's obviously not going to happen in like a few years. So.
No, actually, there was a line in the movie there, something like, we dolphins or whales, I'm not sure which it was, are part of our culture to eat them. You eat cows in the West, so what's the difference? And that kind of.
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you get that kind of as criticism a lot, and how you would kind of respond to that?
Yeah, I've had that exact question in while I was in Taiji, and it was. We assume it was a local. A lot of the locals, well, none of the locals speak English, so it's very hard to strike a conversation up with them. And I would love to, because I would love to know if they even know why we're there, or what we're doing. Absolutely anything. And they do have propaganda pages about us. So there's something called Taiji blog, that when activists are in Taiji, you have like a profile, and it puts information up. They go on your social media if they can get on it and get pictures up. And so mine says that I was involved in harassment activities in China. I went on a book tour in China. If that's sort of the information that the locals are being fed, we have no idea what the locals know about us. It's the norm now, though, I can tell you that. The hunters that go out on a day-to-day basis now have never gone out on a hunt and not had activists standing, taking... I don't know if you can call us activists in Taiji, because we're just taking pictures, but one morning while we were just waiting while the boats were out, just seeing what was happening, a guy came up and it was my fault, really, because they don't read English. If you're wearing t-shirts and stuff, they may know the logos, but I actually had a t-shirt on that I was given on the Chinese tour, which actually had the Cove written on it. Now the Taiji locals hate the Cove. You can probably see why. It doesn't portray them very well, especially not private space. So he saw the back of my t-shirt and was like, the Cove, and he just had it in for me then. It was like, you're here for this, you're here, because they can sometimes say, you're here anti-dolphin hunting, and it's up to you what you say. You could say, no, I'm just, watching the boats, other people just watching, whatever. And he started saying like, well, you eat pigs, you eat this, you eat that, and he was going through, and of course most of us are vegan, if not vegetarians, so we're all like, no. So he was like sort of standing there. So he was like, well, you eat vegetables? And we're like, yeah. And he pointed at a tree and was like, you eat? And I was like, no, I don't eat trees. I sort of get where you're going with this. And when we said yes, he was like, oh, you're a hypocrite, this is alive too. So actually they go well beyond comparing it to other animals, to the point where there are parts of the culture over there, and it's the whole, plants, run away from pain as well, which is obviously like a whole different story. I don't know how you respond to that when there's a language barrier. I can respond to that perfectly well when it's like English to English, but he just sort of shouted in Japanese and ran off, because we were like, well, yes, we have to eat something.
You respond in English to English, just out of curiosity.
English to English. What meat eaters over here are eating isn't toxic in mercury, and it's not, well, some stuff's probably covered up by the government, maybe. There's obviously like media and whatever, but to the extent that there is a media cover up in Japan about the toxicity of the dolphin meat, that's completely different. It says there about it being in the school systems, and that those two guys stood up against it, and it was removed from the school systems. It's now back in the school systems. They're teaching children to cook it. They're coming up with like cool ideas what you can do with dolphin meat, again, to create this market for it and something to do with it. So there's that. There's then the intelligence question, which to me, I don't think you can judge on intelligence as to whether we should eat another animal or not, but that's just personal. But evidence suggests that dolphins are more intelligent than humans in some ways that not everyone agrees. A lot of scientists don't want to ever say that anything's more intelligent than a human, because it doesn't go down very well. But we certainly know from an emotional point of view that a majority of species of dolphins have a whole extra part of their brain that deals with high-level thinking and intelligent thinking and emotions. So they actually use emotions more in their day-to-day lives than we do. And they're a lot more linked as a network. I always find this hard to explain, but they're almost physically linked through emotions to the other members of their family. And you can see that when they're in the cove. you can make out exactly who is. You can obviously see the mothers and the babies. You can see who the male. You can see how they're responding to the whole situation. So I don't think something that is that intelligent should be hunted in from. And then obviously there's the issue that they're going out into international waters, and then they're driving them in, and then they come past a certain point, they claim ownership. So you can see the public part of the beach there, at the cove, the bit you can actually stand on, and then it's round the corner that there's a cove. They have so many nets, there's a few more now than there was back then. And the first one says all the dolphins and whales beyond this point are owned by Taiji Town. It's like, are they? If I'd gone out and picked one up, do I own it then? So, they're wild animals, so that's just what to do. But yeah, trying to say that to someone who only speaks Japanese. You just have to sort of not allow him. He just went off shouting. I don't know. But I wish I could speak to more of the locals. I would love to learn Japanese. I don't have the time to learn Japanese. They ask you that when you get there, do you speak Japanese? Because I think they would be really concerned if we did learn it and then say, no, I don't speak it, and then listen to what they're saying the rest of the time. Because I'd love to know what they say about us.
Some of the funniest bits in the film were the translation,
Yeah.
the subtitles.
Yeah, I would really love to know. I mean, no one, even the police don't. There's one police officer called AG who's quite friendly, and basically if they need to have like an actual conversation with us, they'll call AG. There's another female police officer, I don't know her name, but she speaks reasonable English. The rest of them, it's like it's over like Translate, when it reads it out, and it's like makes it really easy to be like, oh, what are you talking about? I'm going home. So yeah.
As you were saying, the use of someone you to translate our conversation, but would you have any correspondences over in Japan, like other activists there, to assist in that, or would it be quite non-existent over there?
Do you mean Japanese activists?
Over there.
There are Japanese activists, but you wouldn't tend to see them on the ground in Taiji. It's very difficult to talk out against the grain in Japan. Your life is made extremely difficult for you. So there are Japanese activists, but they wouldn't sort of be standing beside you in Japan. There is one man who lives in Taiji who I don't know if you call him an activist, but he reports on Facebook and stuff about the hunts a similar way as Dolphin Project do. And he comes every morning and he sort of says hi, but he doesn't speak very good English. Okay. So I suppose maybe there are some people hanging around that are activists, but we don't know because they don't speak English.
Yeah, they wouldn't be.
That's it. And then it's very difficult to know because even with this guy, we're all quite good, well, we say we're good friends with him, it's difficult to speak to him. I would be very surprised if he's not a spy or working for the police, because I don't understand how he would be allowed to still return to the harbour day after day and talk to us, because no one's allowed to. Not allowed, but I think it would be frowned upon and they'd probably be called into the police office and given a talking to. So. Anyone else?
Thanks, Emil. Maria, that was amazing. It was good to get an update because the code was also 2 years ago. So
yeah, there's a lot. It's totally it's nowhere near that exciting in time. Unless you're with
And thanks to everyone for coming. We really appreciate it. And with every screening, we're seeing more and more faces. So it's really exciting. If you want to get involved, we're called Dublin Animal Rights Group. We have a Facebook page. We have a meetup page as well. So next week we're putting on another screening. It's Cowspiracy in Small Changes in Drumcondra. Also, our friends at NARA, the National Animal Rights Alliance, are putting on a protest at the Greyhound racing course in Shelburne on Saturday. So if you just have a look at our Facebook page, we'll give you updates on that. If I left anything out, Sean? No? Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot for coming and hopefully we'll see you next week.